Well, 2016 is in the bank, thank goodness, and I figured I'd do what everyone else does. Make a video talking about my favorite games that came out in 2016! Except just ridiculously later than everyone else because I kept getting too sucked into playing my number 1 game. So let's get into it. My number 5 is Severed, which comes to us by way of Drinkbox Studios. Sorry about having to use trailer footage over and over, but I can't record from my Vita, unfortunately. Severed brings you into its world to play as Sasha, a girl whose arm was, severed, as she fights through a hellish world to rescue her family. The game is a first-person dungeon crawler with touch-based combat, which may sound like the most unappealing thing in the world to many people, but the game absolutely nails its weird structure. Progression leads to exploring dungeons room by room, almost akin to a Metroid or Castlevania-esque game, complete with obstacles that require moves and power-ups that you'll have to return to later in the game to pass through. As for that touch-based combat I mentioned, it's not just random swiping. Every enemy requires a different way to best it, making combat more like puzzles than just mindlessly running a finger across your screen. This elevates the combat to an incredibly rewarding system, alongside enemy drops that can be used to power up your character in RPG-like ways. Severed is a short but sweet experience. It also doesn't hurt that the game has a very striking art style and soundtrack. Severed hit Nintendo and smartphone devices this year, and if any of this sounds remotely interesting to you, it is absolutely worth supporting this game and developer. My number 4 is Hitman. Episode 1. Yeah, probably pretty weird to put one portion of a game on my top games list, but I found Hitman so enjoyable that even one part of the game was more entertaining to me than most I put decent time into in 2016. From the outside looking in, Hitman always seemed like the most dry, humorless game I had ever seen, but thanks to Giant Bomb coverage, I got the idea that maybe I'd been wrong about Hitman and gave the game a go for myself. What I found was a game that plays it straight in story beats, but is an incredibly silly game full of smart stupidity in its actual gameplay. Hitman made me laugh more than any other game this year and made me think more than any other game this year. Even just the game's rendition of a mansion in Paris is one of the most fun sandboxes I've ever romped through in a video game. Detailing exactly how I want to reach a target, having something come up and having to change plans on the fly can be stressful, but in a great way. This game revels in its chaos, and even screw-ups that might frustrate in other stealth games generate excitement here. 2016's Hitman is something very special, and has me eager to play the rest of the episodes and earlier games in the series. When Ratchet Clank hit PS4, I had just finished marathoning most of the main series games over the course of months in anticipation. I was worried I'd be burnt out and unable to enjoy the game. And quite the opposite happened. I got hooked, spent way too long playing it consecutively, and wound up getting the Platinum Trophy in just about 3 days. Maybe it was the dazzling graphics, maybe it was how tight the controls felt, maybe it was just really interesting to see how similar the map layouts were to the first game and how they actually held up very well. But the game grabbed me and reinvigorated me, unwilling to let me go. I think some Ratchet fans were maybe wary of the game due to the series' handling in recent years, but I'd wager after the fact most agree that Ratchet Clank 2016 was a very refreshing romp, and that we're all dying to know what Insomniac winds up doing with the series next. I can't wait to find out. Playing through the Uncharted games in 2014 was part of the impetus behind learning to love PlayStation, so I was pretty excited for the 4th entry, if a little nervous at how Nathan suddenly had a brother, and if I could really rally myself to get excited for another 10 plus hours with plenty of gunplay I'm not very good at. Well, turns out I could, especially with a combat system that takes some stealth aspects from The Last of Us, and makes it work well in an Uncharted setting. It actually became my preferred way to tackle combat situations, which made it unfortunate when certain combat scenarios wouldn't allow for it, but alas. The Uncharted series is a tricky one for me since for the most part, it's not the gameplay I find to be the most stellar part of the package, which is tough to say about a video game I like a lot, where gameplay should be king, but Uncharted draws me in with its characters and sense of unabashed, dumb, swashbuckling fun, and 4 did so in a more grounded way that I think has an interesting message. I don't want to get into spoilers, but I'll just say it really showed an interesting dynamic between Nathan and Elena that you don't often get in power trip video games, and I think it was really bold. The game's production values speak for themselves, too. Ultimately, Uncharted 4 rose above my expectations and satisfied me near completely. I just wish I was better at shooting the guns. I'm very bad at shooting. So that leaves my number 1 favorite game, and if you somehow made it through that rambling stream I exported to YouTube, you know that for me it was far and away Stardew Valley. It's maybe a bit cheap to say I love it so much because it feels like an entry in a long-established series, but the similarities to Harvest Moon are undeniably there and charming. My favorite Harvest Moon game was Friends of Mineral Town for the Game Boy Advance, and for various reasons I just feel like that series never gave me another game like it. Well, except for more Friends of Mineral Town, technically. The series always felt like it had a cool cuteness to it for me, then started getting a bit too cutesy afterward, and hearing mixed things about the games themselves always put me off from trying many more. So that's where Stardew Valley comes in, with the pixel art style and many of the same hooks Friends of Mineral Town caught me with. It felt natural to jump in, start tilling the field to prepare it for crops, and to save resources to start building things like chicken coops or silos to store hay. Same for conversing with the townspeople, fishing, and digging around in mines for ore to upgrade my tools. Stardew Valley does plenty on its own as well, such as having an incredibly wholesome, charming vibe to it, a basic combat system, an Animal Crossing-esque museum aspect, a great style, and a very chill soundtrack. The game just makes me feel good when I play it. It's my comfort food. When I first tried the PC version and put about 20 hours into it, it reminded me why I loved video games. Then it came out on PS4 in December, and I wound up putting about 40 hours into that fresh save file, which is really scary. Part of why this video took so long is because every time I sit down to write the script, I just wind up playing Stardew instead. It's cheap enough that it's a game I'd recommend everyone try, unless you already know you don't care for this kind of game. So those are my favorite games that came out in 2016 that I actually got the chance to play. Money, yo! But there are plenty I didn't get to play, which leads me to ask, what were yours? What made your favorite games in 2016 your favorites? I'd love to know. Thanks for watching, everyone. 2017 is looking even better in my eyes for games, and I can't wait. This video was generously supported by the following patrons on Patreon. Thank you.